My name's Angela and I'm a visually impaired designer. 6 tips on how to design an accessible logo. Hey everyone, what's up? I'm super excited about this video because I get to finally share with you my top 6 tips on how you can design a logo that's accessible. And I'll be sharing with you some of my favorite logos and how they relate to these tips. For those of you who are new to my channel, my name's Angela and I'm a visually impaired designer. And my goal is to help other designers make their designs more accessible for those with disabilities, and especially for those who are visually impaired and blind. Now without further ado, let's get into the tips. Stay true to the brand. Alright, so my first tip for how to design an accessible logo is creating a logo that stays true to your brand. Now what I mean by that is you want to create a logo that represents what your brand stands for. For example, if your brand's mission is sustainability, then you might want to reflect that in the logo. For example, you could use more earthy tones, or you could use more of an organic shapes. And maybe you would want to avoid anything to make your logo look kind of shiny or more rigid or have sharp lines. And using these visual cues can really help your audience know what your brand is all about. This should really reflect in all aspects of your logo, including the color palette, the typography, the shape, the type of logo you decide to use, whether it's all typographic or it uses imagery or both, is super important and can really make a difference in your brand. My whole last video was about 4 different types of logos that exist, and I share examples of each of these types. So if you're interested in seeing this video, I encourage you to go check it out. I'll make sure to put it in the description below. Now let's look at some good logos that stay true to their brand. A good example of a logo that stays true to its brand is the Walt Disney logo. The logo is Walt Disney's signature, and it gives that personalized feel. Over time, this logo has changed slightly to make it more legible, but has consistently stayed the signature of Walt Disney. The next example is the Home Depot logo, and although it's just a simple word mark logo, it uses a stencil font which gives it that DIY homemade feel, which is the type of customers that Home Depot typically has. People who want to make their own home improvements. Recognizable. The next tip for a super successful logo is creating a logo that is super recognizable. In a sea of so many logos out there, millions of logos, that your logo is recognized and that when people see it, they know that your brand exists and they know what you stand for. It is important to stand out in the crowd and that people aren't getting confused by your logo. There are some brands that are instantly recognizable just simply by the colors that they use in their logo, or a certain shape or typeface that they use. We should be able to recognize a logo by just looking at even a little part of it. Now some good examples of highly recognizable logos would be the Target logo, which uses the white target on a red background and can be recognized simply from that image. The next example would be the Apple logo, which is for the technology company, and all you have to see is the apple and you instantly know that's for their products. And the third example would be the Nike logo. This wasn't always their logo, but is very well known now for the swoosh. Fun fact, this logo was actually created by a student at the time, and she originally only earned $35 for creating this logo. Simple. The next tip is to make sure your logo is simple. You shouldn't have anything that isn't needed, any frivolousness, just things that support the logo and that really give true meaning to your logo and brand. A couple of visual ways where you can do that is by limiting your color palette to really only 2 or 3 colors. I would say 4 colors at the absolute max if you have more of a complicated logo. And same with the typography. You really want to limit your typography to 1 or 2 fonts, and putting more than that is really going to make it visually complicated. Although it might seem easy to create a simple logo, it's actually a lot harder than you would think. So when you're in the design process and doing your sketching, you really want to pay attention to if you're adding extra things that really aren't necessary, and I challenge you to take those out and see how it is without it. Now let's take a look at a couple of examples of super simple logos that are really effective. The YouTube logo is a good example of a simple logo because if you see a play button on a red background, you now know that's for YouTube. The next example is the Hulu logo. Now this is a simple word mark logo, but they create their own font to make it unique for them. If you notice the L and the U, if you combine them and turn the U upside down, it would make the H, which makes a really consistent and unique logo for Hulu, even though it's super simple. The next example is the Amazon logo. It's a simple word mark logo, but it uses the simple graphic of an arrow going from the A to the Z in Amazon. Now this is implying that you can buy anything that you can search from the letters A to Z. This can also be read as part of a smiley face. Readability. The next tip is to make sure that it's readable. This tip might be the most closely related to making sure it works for those with a visual impairment, where they're able to actually read the text that is on there, or if it's an image, that is easily identifiable what the image is trying to portray. If your logo includes text, there's a couple of factors you really want to pay attention to. What font are you using? Are you using more than one font, and do they work well together? Are you using a cursive font, a sans serif font, a script font, where it has more of an organic shape and is a little bit more difficult to read? Another really important thing is to pay attention to the size of the text and to try it out in multiple different formats. So whether when it's large is it legible, when it is small is it also still legible, so that when you're using it from platform to platform, are you able to still read that logo? Another factor is what background are you putting your logo on? So is it a solid color that works well with the color of your type? Or are you putting an image behind it? Are you using a texture or pattern? It really can make the readability of a logo decrease when you start adding things like images behind a text. So you want to be conscious of how you're using your logo in context. Alright, let's take a look at a couple of logos with high readability. A good example of a readable logo is the FedEx logo. They use a simple sans serif font that is highly readable. They also have hidden meaning in their logo, where you can see an arrow moving forward in the negative space of the E and the X. This implies that they are quick at making their deliveries. If you also outline their logo, you can see the shape of a truck. H&M is also a good logo for readability because originally the name was Hennes and Martys, and they simplified it to H&M, which makes it more accessible to everyone because those are European names and can be difficult to say. So simplifying it to H&M really makes it easier to read and to say. Versatile. The next tip is to make sure your logo is versatile and that you can use it on different formats. For example, it's going to be totally different how you use your logo on a sign versus how you use it on a website or an app. This is where having a combination logo can come in handy because in some places you can use just the typography, sometimes you can use your icon, or sometimes you can even use both of them, and it just depends on the context. You need to think about how your brand looks from one product to another product so that it's still consistent and looks good. Now let's take a look at some good examples of versatile logos. Surprisingly, one of my favorite logos is the McDonald's logo. Now this became one of my favorite logos one day when I was going down the street and I noticed that the yellow M was implying that it was two French fries being dipped in ketchup. I had never really realized this. McDonald's is a versatile logo too because you don't even have to have the words paired with it, and they use it in different contexts, but you can always recognize it as the McDonald's logo. The colors are very iconic for their specific brand. An excellent example of a versatile logo is the Google logo. They have a super simple word mark for their landing page, but you can often see a Google Doodle, which is where they modified the original logo for a specific event or website. Google also has multiple products within Google, and you can see a unifying look for all of these. So whether that's Gmail or Google Photos or Google Drive, you can always tell when it's a Google logo because of the look and feel it has. Consistent. My next tip is to make sure that your branding and logo is consistent. This goes hand in hand with having a logo that's versatile. You want to use the same typography, the same colors. This doesn't mean that it always has to look the same. Like we just talked about, we want a versatile logo that can be used in a lot of different ways that is still recognizable, but we still want to make sure that it's consistent from one way it's being used to another. Another way you want to make sure that a logo is consistent is If you have a logo that you need to be updated and you want to transform it into something a little different than it is now, you want to pull assets from your current logo and apply them to your new logo so that there is a little bit of consistency from changing from one logo to another. Now I want to show you two logos that are consistent over time. A great example of a consistent logo is the Olympics logo. This is an interesting logo because every time the Olympics are held, they're in a different country. And while every country gets to design their own logo for that specific year, it is also paired with the Olympic logos for consistency's sake so that it's easily recognizable from decade to decade. Now I have to ask, is anyone else as disappointed as I am that the Olympics aren't happening this year? Ugh. I was so sad when I found this out. But I'm just glad that it's happening next year. Another great example of a consistent logo would be the Domino's logo. As you can see from this timeline, the Domino's logo has changed over time. But you can see how it transitions from one logo to the next, and how they take elements from the previous logo to add into the new logo so that the customers are still familiar with their logo. And now Domino's is to the point where their logo is just the pictorial mark and they don't have to put the words with it. Question of the week. My question for you today is, what is the hardest part of the design process for you? The hardest part of the design process for me is that stage where you've been coming up with ideas for quite some time, but you don't feel like you quite have the right logo or the right design. And so you have to try to force yourself to keep going, but you really are to the point where you just want to stop. I would love to hear your responses in the comments below, and I'll try to respond to any comments that I receive. Good job, guys. We made it through all of that. That was a lot of information. Well, I hope you found this video helpful and that you learned something new about how you can make your logo more accessible to a wider range of people. If you like this video and you want to support me, please like this video and subscribe below, and make sure you turn on the notification bell so you can receive notifications. Well, good luck with any future logo designing you do. I hope you all have a great day. Bye!